because of place. So when I was here, because it's such a walking city that I lived in, and because so many stairs compared to the place I was from before, I started to notice that my body changed. And because I was an athlete for 25 years of my life, it was something I really noticed. When I was a swimmer, I noticed my arms were bigger, and when I was a runner, I noticed my legs. And when I was in Montreal, I noticed that my legs also were very strong, much stronger than before. So I thought about how the body is so malleable and so plastic and so incredible, and how it actually is just a signifier for what you do every day. And you can see what people do and the work they do from the trace of their body. So I wanted to capture a moment, a bookmark of the body when I was in Montreal at the beginning. And what I did is I took 400, 500 photographs of the body in different movements and flexibility and what I could do at the time. And those photos became the series that was this piece and the drawing series that is on the wall. From those photos, I used a silhouette, a certain part of a silhouette, and I created the sculptural work with that silhouette as a wedge, like a piece of cheese, and it all came together to turn into an abstracted form. So this one is actually lips, a chin, and an elbow. And it has to talk about the breath, and it has to talk about breathing with movement. So formal decisions like giving it a throat and using breathing apparatus and tubes from a hospital all had to do with reflecting on which part of the body it was I used for this piece. And there were several sculptures like this, depending on which part of the body it was. It had different ways of showing itself in three-dimensional form. And this one was fingers, again at the bottom. It was about dexterity and the ability to move the fingers and twist and create new forms. The drawing work that's back here, it's the same series of photographs, but instead of using those photographs and then using machines to create three-dimensional work, I use the photographs to create these layers. Wherever the three bodies touched, I used that as a way to create an abstracted shape. And I felt that the shape really had a relationship to the sculptural work because it was abstracted, because it was reflective and almost like the grotesque, where you can see things coming out of this reflection. So wherever the bodies touched, it became a form, and I was very interested in the trace of the machine. So machines were helped to use to make these pieces, and then I used the sort of linear look of machine trace to create the body that was made from the bodies in these works. So that was the first sort of bracket of work that I was creating when I came to Montreal. From there, I was thinking, why am I really hiding the body? I seem to be hiding the body in silhouette, I'm hiding it in abstraction. I want to show the body in a more real way. And I want to show this incredible movement and this ability with static sculpture, which was something I was tackling at the time. And so I created this piece, which is up there. So the piece up there, for those of you who came on the opening day, it was out on the patio. It's two separate sculptures. They hover just a few inches apart from each other, and also on the floor. They don't quite touch, but the arms create a formal line, a diagonal, and the metal actually bends to create like a dive. So the work is static, it doesn't move, but it hovers very close, and it also has parts of the body like the torso, which seems to be one torso, and yet the arms extend forwards and stretch backwards. And with that piece, I was thinking about the ability of the body to move itself in these different ways and create patterns and lines of movement, but also with the metal to draw the eye, because I was really inspired by a dive for this piece. Actually, I worked as a lifeguard for 10 years, teaching people who had trauma when they were children, so I taught a lot of adults how to swim, and teaching them about the ability to flex the body and also looking at how much they could or could not flex the body. It changed the way I taught. And so with this piece, I was really interested in that kind of flexibility and that how far can my arms go front and backwards. So I used myself for that one. And then from there, maybe we can go to this next room over here. The next one would be this piece, and it was still looking at the athlete, it was looking at movement. This piece is called Swing, Slap, Smash. So I played on a lot of different sports teams, and I had a lot of different female teammates who were very kind to let me use them. But it's a cricket bat, and a hockey stick, and a badminton hand, and a baseball swing, and all of these different sports that I played with these women, no matter what it was, we all seemed to have some sort of apparatus, and it was used in a particular way to hit something else. And depending on the sport, you had to change the way that your body moved, and you had to change the micro reflexes and the way your hips twist and your wrists twist. But I was really interested that if you took that object away, you still always had your hand doing something of coordination. So I wanted to create a link, a conversation between the fact that these sports are so different and people are like, oh, I really like this, I really like that, I don't like this. But they all have to do with coordinating with your body and tweaking little skills. So with this piece, Swing, Slap, Smash, it's using all those different intense points, that point where it would hit the thing, and creating this line of thought or this connection between them. The red was meant to be a very bold color. It was meant to really make the action pop, and it's a color that I'm obviously attracted to, as you can see in this red room. But it actually started me thinking about other things, and leading to this piece, which I'm particularly proud of, which is the Red Woman piece. I was doing a lot of research into the history of medicine to see about how we talked about bodies throughout history, not just how we talk about bodies now. And I was interested in this because I think the conversation can often be skewed when women talk about their bodies because of media. So I wanted to start at the beginning and see where can I divert that with my work. And so when I was looking at medical texts, I came across a print manuscript, so beautiful, in full color, of a body that the skin had been taken away, and all you could see was the red muscles of the body. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, the muscular body is something I really want to work with. So, as a lifeguard when I was young, we used these therapeutic bands for physiotherapy. And so you would use just a small one to work on your muscles, which I thought was really funny because they also became the muscles for this piece. So that material was really the first part of this work. I also was thinking about what parts of the female body are acceptably omitted in fine art history. And most often it is generally headless or armless, if we think of Venus de Milo or Victory of Samothrace. The arms are gone, the head is gone, but the torso and bust remain. And often when I have conversations about this tendency, people are very accustomed to it, and it is seen as the beauty of fine art, which I think is a valid way to look at it, but I also think I wanted to change that conversation as well. So instead of cutting off the arms and feet, I decided to make it headless initially because I didn't want to impose a certain person on it, or the model that I used, but I kept the arms and I kept the feet. And it began my thesis when I was in my master's of can I bookend the body? And that was what my research was about. Can I bookend a material on the inside that has a narrative to say about what this body can do? And in this case, the arms and feet are bookending the muscular body. The pieces that are on the wall came after I made this piece. When I was interested in how doctors would learn about the body, they would be in these operating theaters. So the operating theaters were basically many stands above the area where a surgery would take place. And I used the tile material because we use tile as a way of signifying cleanliness and sterility because we can clean it. So it was a really important material for me to use, along with the abstracted images of the viewing operating theater. So that's how this piece came to be. However, I found this piece to be problematic for my own research at one point when I said, well, I really did a vicious thing to her, didn't I? I just kind of cut off her head. So I said, how can I not involve the head because I don't want it to have too much to say about one personal story. I want it to be all-encompassing. I want it to be open to more people and still follow this rule that I've created of bookending the body. And so that brings me to the final pieces, starting with this one. Materiality is always something very important in my work. With this piece, I'm using red oak to create the narrative of waves. So it's kind of like, don't worry, it's kind of like the butcher's block that people would make. They would use the end grain, but instead of just using it for the aesthetic quality, I made it so that it looked like water. And I had this bookended preset with this narrative of someone swimming or drowning, and just happened to make it 2 inches thick. Swimming has a lot to do, I guess, with my work, because 2 inches is all you need actually to drown. So this piece is called 2 inches. Yeah. So now I'm going to bring you to the last part. By the way, this was a piece that I made when I was interested in the wood, and I was interested in the muscular body, and drawing parallels between wood as a materiality and the body as a materiality. Someone I was researching at the time, I was reading the manifesto of the cyborg, and I was interested in one idea whereby instead of looking at bodies and looking at gender in bipolar ways, in male and female, if you compare the human body to other things, such as the machine or the animal, you can break out of some context, you can break out of some barriers. And there's many things about the body that I find really fascinating when compared with material like wood. So when you look at this wood, I use this all the time as a material, and we paint white over it, and then it's gone. But actually all of these rings really tell the story of what this material was. And it becomes so flattened because we're so used to seeing it a certain way. And so what I wanted to do was weave the muscles through it, create this idea of the knotted muscle, create these kind of tensions, but also bring back to life the layers of the wood that we've become blinded to. And so that's what happened with this piece. I'll bring you to the last part. In my next attempt to deal with this question of bookending the body, to deal with my own hang-up with not chopping off things like they've been done so many times in history, I decided to create these creatures that use the ideas from the manifesto of blending with natural, blending with technological, and blending with the animal. So the way that this piece was made was my own hand, but also executed with a machine, a laser cutter, so you see the burn. And in this piece, actually, the only thing that is not painted is the subject itself. So the wood of this board is visible through the piece itself. And I wanted it to go through this idea of using the machine in a process that it does, and then using the hand in a very painstaking process as well. It's important to me that both things are visible in all of the pieces that I make. This one was driftwood, driftwood log roots, and it kind of reminded me of like a twister body. And so I thought, what if all of these become appendages, all of them become arms and legs? And it got me into this idea of working with the monstrous. And something becomes monstrous when there's too many of one part or too less. So an extra thumb can be monstrous, or an extra finger, or missing a finger. But what's really incredible about the human body and the natural bodies is they still follow a pattern. When someone has an extra thumb when they're born with it, it's often reflected the side of the thumb. It's not coming out of their elbow. There's a pattern to it that follows the same way that branches and trees work. And so this was again working with that idea of blending different bodies together and similarities I was interested in. With this piece, it was one of the latest pieces that I created, Victory of Valletta. I was truly inspired by Victory of Samothrace, the winged Nike. And in Malta, which is the country of my mother's people, I was sitting with my grandfather, who was 92. We were in his hometown, and we threw bread, and all these pigeons just attacked the floor. And there were so many of them, a fester of them, so I quickly pulled out my camera and took photos. but they moved so quickly that they became one amorphous object, just wings sticking out everywhere. And I was thinking, this is a really interesting creature to have something that has these wings. It's a really prevalent use of an appendage in our visual history, but also to bring it back into my research. So I created the pink pigeon legs, but also this sort of amorphous pigeon-like creature. And this piece is Victory of Valletta. It's one of my favorite pieces, actually. From there, I have now taken one step in another direction. I'm interested now in the psychology of a person in a certain place. I thought a lot about the winters here in Montreal, actually. I'm originally from Toronto, and I just find that this city is much more alive, the arts are much more fostered, but also I feel the winter feels longer. And so to help with that, I have a lot of plants in my house. And I noticed whenever you're driving down the street, you see in the window so many tropical plants. Everyone has the same tropical plants in their window. I started to wonder about that. So I did research as to why we keep plants and why plants make us feel better. And in an interesting study they did in California, they found in hospitals that patients who have plants in their room heal faster and feel less pain. And patients who have fake plants in their room heal at the same rate and have the same lack of pain compared to those who have nothing. So the artificial plant actually has a really impacting effect on human psychology. And so we can't deny the kind of materiality that we use. I was interested in using plastic to create this artifice, which was the piece that I was making. A cucoloris is an object that is used in video and film. And it's basically an object with many strange shapes in it that allows you to create light and shadow when you're creating film. So I was interested in creating this plant that played with light and shadow as a materiality, and asking the question of, if it doesn't look exactly like a leaf, can it still have that effect of looking like the artificial plant? The piece was originally meant to have colors and everything, but when I put it up on the wall and I saw the shadows so clear, I'm like, it's done. This piece is done. What I really love about this work is, even though it has the beautiful lights on the piece right now, the most important place that this work is installed is next to a window. And sometimes throughout today, I think you might see there's a streak of light that comes across the piece. And the hard sunlight, when it comes through, creates the darkest lines that, to take a photo of this piece, the shadow is actually more prevalent than the piece itself. And so, because light and shadow are so fleeting, my preference is actually to use sunlight with this piece, that it is ignited at a certain point in the day, in a certain place, in someone's home. And it's just in those few fleeting moments you can appreciate the piece, which I really feel like light and shadow are naturally. So, although it works really well with these lights, I do hope you get to see it with a streak of light coming through. And that is